The dust didn't just sit on the floor of that barn in rural Ohio. It ruled the place. It hung in the shafts of sunlight like suspended memories, waiting for someone to come along and disturb the peace. My name is Jack. I'm a mechanic by trade, but an American historian by heart. I don't write books. I don't lecture in colleges. I turn wrenches. I believe that the history of this great nation isn't just written in ink. It's forged in steel, smelled in gasoline, and buried in the rust of machines that built the middle class and defeated tyranny. When I got the call about the heap of junk in a collapsed barn 3 hours south of Cleveland, I almost didn't go. The old man on the phone said it was a tractor, or maybe a truck. He didn't know. He just wanted it gone. But when I pulled that rotting tarp back, my heart didn't just skip a beat, it stood at attention. It wasn't a tractor. It was a 1944 Willys MB, the Jeep, the icon, the vehicle that General George Marshall called America's greatest contribution to modern warfare. But she was in bad shape. The tires were rotted flat. The olive drab paint was flaking off like dead skin, revealing the angry orange rust beneath. The windshield was shattered, a spider web of glass frozen in time. Most people would see scrap metal worth maybe $300 at the yard. I saw a soldier. I saw a veteran that had been left to die in the dark. And in America, we don't leave our soldiers behind. Not ever. I bought it for $500. The old man laughed as he counted the bills. "Good luck with that ghost," he said. I didn't need luck. I had grit. And little did I know, I wasn't just dragging a Jeep home on my trailer. I was bringing home a secret that had been waiting 80 years to be told. Restoring a piece of history is a war of attrition. It's you against the seized bolts. You against the stripped screws. You against the physics of corrosion. For 3 months, I lived in my garage. My wife, bless her heart, would bring me sandwiches and coffee, watching me wrestle with the transmission. "Jack," she'd say, "why this one? You've restored Mustangs, Camaros, old pickups. Why are you killing yourself over this little Jeep?" I wiped the grease from my forehead, leaving a black smear. "Because, Sarah, look at this frame. This steel was forged in a factory where the women were Rosie the Riveters. It was shipped across the Atlantic while U-boats hunted it. It might have stormed a beach. It represents everything we are. If I let it rot, I'm letting us rot." She nodded. She knew. That's the thing about patriotism. It's not just a word. It's an act of preservation. I stripped it down to the frame. I sandblasted the chassis until the raw, gray steel gleamed like a sword. I rebuilt the Go Devil engine, piston by piston. Every turn of the wrench felt like a prayer to the past. But the magic happened when I got to the body tub. I was working on the driver's side, trying to pound out a dent near the fuel tank well. It was a stubborn dent, shaped oddly, like something had impacted it from the inside, not the outside. I was reaching up under the dashboard, blindly feeling around for a bolt I couldn't see, when my fingers brushed against something that didn't feel like metal. It felt like canvas. It was wedged high up behind the instrument cluster, jammed between the firewall and the glove box bracing, a place where no mechanic would ever look unless they were doing a frame-off restoration. I grabbed a flashlight and contorted my body under the dash. There, wrapped in an oil-soaked rag and shoved into a gap in the metal, was a small bundle. My breath hitched. In the classic car world, we call this the build sheet. Usually, it's just a piece of paper from the factory. But this wasn't paper. I pulled it out gently. The rag was stiff with age and grease. I set it on my workbench, my hands trembling. The garage was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own heart. I peeled back the layers of the rag. Inside, protected from the moisture and the rats for 8 decades, was a small tin tobacco box. Prince Albert, criminal cut. I pried the lid open. Inside wasn't tobacco. It was a picture, a set of dog tags, and a letter. I picked up the dog tags first. The metal was cool in my hand. CPL. Miller, Thomas J., U.S. Army. Blood type O. Catholic. Thomas Miller. I spoke the name out loud. Thomas. It felt heavy in the air. I looked at the photo. It was black and white, slightly cracked down the middle. It showed a young man, barely 20, leaning against this very Jeep back when she was brand new. He had a cocky grin, a cigarette hanging from his lip, and a helmet tilted back. Beside him stood a young woman in a floral dress, laughing, her hand on his chest. They looked like they owned the world. They looked like America. Then I unfolded the letter. The paper was thin, almost translucent, but the ink was dark blue fountain pen. The handwriting was rushed, but elegant. June 3rd, 1944. Somewhere in England. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it means I didn't make it back to Ohio. It means the stars didn't align for us, and the war took its toll. But don't you weep for me, Elle. Don't you dare. We are about to do something big. The boys are nervous. The sky is full of planes. The channel is choppy. They say this is the push that breaks the back of the monster. They say we are fighting for the soul of the world. I'm scared, Elle. I won't lie to you, but I'm not running, because I know that back home, you're sitting on that porch swing, and someday, our kids deserve to sit there too, without worrying about shadows falling over our land. I hid this in the Jeep, my lucky girl Betsy. Sarge says if anything happens to me, the vehicle stays with the unit, but I have a feeling Betsy will make it home, even if I don't. Maybe, just maybe, 100 years from now, some other patriot will find this and know that Thomas loved Eleanor until the lights went out. I love you more than freedom itself. Yours forever, Tom. I sat there in my garage, a grown man covered in grease, and I wept. June 3rd, 1944, 3 days before D-Day. Thomas Miller wrote this letter before storming the beaches of Normandy. He hid it in the dash of his Jeep, his Betsy, hoping it would find its way home. He never retrieved it, which meant Thomas Miller likely died on that sand, or in the hedgerows of France. And for 80 years, Eleanor, whoever she was, never got her goodbye. The restoration of the Jeep was no longer a hobby. It was a mission. The Jeep was finished 2 weeks later. She was beautiful. Fresh olive drab paint, white stars stenciled on the hood, tires that looked ready to chew up the mud. But the car wasn't the point anymore. The mission was the letter. I turned into a digital detective. I scoured the National Archives. I looked up draft cards. CPL, Thomas J. Miller, born 1924, Akron, Ohio. KIA, June 9th, 1944, Saint Mère Église. He made it past the beach. He died 3 days later, securing a bridge. He was 20 years old. My heart sank. He was gone, obviously. But what about Eleanor? The letter was addressed to Eleanor. No last name, but the photo. The photo showed them together. I looked up Thomas's obituary from the local paper in 1944. It listed his parents, no wife, but it mentioned, survived by his fiancée, Miss Eleanor Vance. Eleanor Vance. I started searching for Eleanor Vance in Ohio. It's a common name. I hit dead end after dead end. Women change their names when they marry. She probably married someone else after the war. She moved on. She lived a whole life. I was about to give up, to just donate the letter to a museum, when I found a forum post on a genealogy site from 2012, looking for info on my grandmother, Eleanor Vance, later Eleanor Higgins. She often spoke of a fiancé lost in Normandy named Tom. She is 88 and living in a care facility in Columbus. The post was 12 years old. Was she still alive? She would be 100 years old now. I found the user who posted it, a guy named Mike. I sent a message. Mike, you don't know me, but I have something that belongs to your grandmother. It's from Tom. Please call me. 3 days passed. No answer. I kept working on the Jeep, tuning the carburetor, polishing the glass. Every time I looked at the dashboard, I felt the weight of that tin box in my pocket. Then, my phone rang. Hello? This is Mike. The voice was hesitant. Mike, I'm Jack. I found a Jeep, a 1,944 Willys, and I found a letter inside from 1,944. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy silence. My grandmother. Mike started, his voice cracking. She's in hospice, Jack. She has maybe a week left. She has Alzheimer's. She doesn't remember much. But she still talks about Tom. She talks about him every single day. Where are you? I asked. We're in Dayton, Mike, I said, grabbing my keys. Clear the driveway. I'm bringing Tom home. I didn't put the Jeep on a trailer. That felt wrong. A soldier doesn't come home on a stretcher if he can walk. I drove that 1,944 Willys MB for 150 miles. Top down, wind rushing. The suspension was stiff, the engine roared like a tractor, and it shook at anything over 45 miles per hour. It was the most glorious drive of my life. Every time I passed a modern car, people stared. They gave thumbs up. Truckers honked their horns. They saw a cool old car. I saw a hearse carrying a soul. I imagined Thomas sitting in the passenger seat next to me. I imagined him smoking that cigarette, looking at the Ohio cornfields, smiling. We made it, buddy. We're going to see her. I pulled into the driveway of a small suburban house in Dayton just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in stripes of purple and gold. Mike was waiting outside. He was a big guy, maybe 50, but he looked small standing next to the history rolling up his driveway. He looked at the Jeep. He looked at me. Is that it? He whispered. That's Betsy, I said. We walked inside. The house smelled like potpourri and old medicine. In the back room, in a hospital bed, lay Eleanor. She was frail. Her skin was like paper. Her eyes were cloudy, staring at the ceiling, lost in the fog of dementia. Grandma? Mike said softly. There's someone here. She didn't move. I walked to the bedside. I felt unworthy to be there. This was a sacred space. Eleanor, I said gently. She blinked. Her eyes drifted to me, but there was no recognition. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the tin box. I took out the photo. I have a picture, Eleanor. Do you know this boy? I held the black and white photo in front of her. Her eyes focused. The fog seemed to part, just for a second. Her hand, shaking uncontrollably, reached up. She touched the face in the photo. Tommy, she whispered. Her voice was like dry leaves, but clear. That's my Tommy. He wrote you a letter, Eleanor, I said. He wrote it before he went away. He hid it so it would be safe. He wanted you to have it. I unfolded the paper. Read it, Mike said, tears streaming down his face. I began to read. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this. As I read Thomas's words, his fear, his hope, his love, something miraculous happened. Eleanor closed her eyes. She wasn't struggling to remember anymore. She was listening. She was 20 years old again. She was on the porch swing. When I got to the end, I love you more than freedom itself. Eleanor let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 80 years. A single tear rolled down her cheek, following the deep lines of age. He didn't leave me, she whispered. He tried to come back. He's here, Eleanor, I said. He's outside. His Jeep. Betsy. She's outside. Her eyes snapped open. Betsy? We couldn't get her out of bed. She was too weak. But I wasn't going to let that stop us. Mike, I said. Open the window. Open the blinds. I ran outside. I fired up the Jeep. That old Go Devil engine roared to life, a sound distinctive, loud, and rhythmic. Chug, 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 chug. I drove it right up onto the lawn, right up to the bedroom window. I revved the engine gently. Inside, Mike told me later. Eleanor smiled. She knew that sound. It was the sound of her youth. It was the sound of Thomas coming to pick her up for the movies. I shut the engine off. I took the American flag that I kept folded in the glove box, a 48-star flag from the era, and I walked back inside. I placed the flag in Eleanor's hands. I placed the tin box on her chest. He loved you, Eleanor, I told her. And he was a hero, a true American patriot. And so are you, for waiting. Eleanor passed away 2 days later. Mike told me she died holding that tin box. She was buried with the letter. I didn't sell the Jeep. I couldn't. Now, I take Betsy to parades. I take her to schools. I tell the kids about Thomas Miller. I tell them about Eleanor. I tell them that this isn't just a car. It's a vessel of liberty. I tell them that patriotism isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about keeping promises. It's about remembering. It's about the fact that freedom is built on the backs of boys named Tom who died scared in a foreign land so that we could live happy in this one. And every time I turn that key and that engine coughs to life, I swear I can smell tobacco smoke. I swear I can hear a laugh. The Star-Spangled Banner isn't just a song, folks. It's a story. It's Thomas's story. It's Eleanor's story. And now, it's our story. So the next time you see a rusted piece of junk in a barn, don't walk away. There might be a hero waiting inside, just begging to come home. God bless our troops. God bless the memory of Thomas Miller. And God bless the United States of America.